So what did you think when, for example, Ms. Magazine started and women's publications? I mean, we'd had the so-called rags in the late 1960s, but by the early 1970s, there was now an effort to turn feminism into a glossy magazine.
Actually, the development of Ms. Magazine was the sign that it had become a broad-based movement out of the control of the intellectuals and the theorists. I remember when Ms. Magazine began, and it was a room full of women. I can't remember whose apartment it was, but it was people had been called to a meeting to discuss the possibility of producing a women's newspaper or broadsheet or magazine, not women's, feminist, a feminist. So in the room was Gloria Steinem and Florence Kennedy, remember her? And a woman named Pat Carbine, who I think she was the money person. Anyway, they were sitting at one end, and you could just chart the whole movement all the way through that room. In the back of the room was me and Jill Johnston, and we were the downtown contingent. It was from uptown to downtown in every way that those terms, and with every connotation that those terms embody. And I wanted to see a newspaper called Revolution, the way Stanton and Anthony had done. And in the front, they wanted a glossy. And they knew from the beginning who they were trying to speak to. Thelma and Louise. I mean,
Thelma. Well, they were trying to speak to a middle American
women. And we wanted to speak what I thought was important was that we have a magazine or a newspaper of really good writing. I didn't want to see rhetoric. I didn't want to see political agitating. Rosa Luxemburg, her entire life she spent trying to talk the Marxists out of writing jargon and out of bad writing. And she believed passionately that the way to convert is through good writing. And no matter what you're saying, that if you were on the left and you were writing well, whatever your thoughts were, they would amount to something. I felt the same way.
You describe yourself as a polemical writer.
Yeah.
And yet you put down Ms. Magazine for writing political stories.
Not political, thin.
Thin?
Intellectually thin.
Intellectually thin, so
you
didn't disagree with the arguments they were making. You
No.
disagreed with how they were making them.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were writing popular feminism. It was like it became a popular glossy.
Right.
And I wanted it to be more intellectual.
Did you engage in activist feminism in any other way?
Not really. I mean, I knew a lot of people, and as I say, I went to lots of events. I would go to gatherings and I would go to meetings, not organizational meetings, but general public meetings. But the fact is, I discovered I had no real taste for it. I could easily have done it, easily. I could have spent my life up on the same platform as everybody else. But I discovered quickly that it was either write or become a public person vis-a-vis feminism. And I realized also at the same time that because I had discovered that I had never known how to take myself seriously as a working writer, that I now had to work at being a worker, and it was not going to come easily to me, and that I had to make a decision. I was either going to do this or I was going to do that. And my choice was obvious in time. So as a feminist, all I did, but it was a lot. I wrote constantly. I mean, I was constantly writing, as I say, wherever I looked, I applied the sudden new feminist perspective to things. And that's, as I said before, taught me the meaning of a point of view, because the point of view was directing what I was writing, but it also forced me to be accountable to the structure of a piece, if you know what I mean. In other words, I was not satisfied with just letting the rhetoric multiply. I to make it a piece of writing.
So in one sense, you were one of the lucky few who could integrate your work with your politics.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, certainly.
And
Yeah.
that would certainly have been consistent with a
Yeah.
feminist
Yeah.
vision of
Yeah.
you were not only using your brain, but you were using it in a way that you approved of.
That's right, and that would pay off in the end. In other words, when the time was over, when the visionary time was over, I would have an occupation. I would have the discipline of work.
You would do what your mother wanted you to do. You'd
Get a trade.
Have a trade to fall
Right.
back on.
She never saw it that way. She always berated me for not becoming a teacher, which was something she could understand. For my mother, a girl goes into one door marked college and comes out another marked teacher. And when I came out of City College and wasn't a teacher, she felt swindled. She didn't know what I'd been doing there all those years.
All those
So
years.
I was reading novels, right?